There are wars you don't talk about, not because they are small, but because no one would understand them, even if you tried. And if you stay until the end, you will hear the one truth that changes how you see your entire emotional life. A truth most people never reach in their lifetime. Now listen carefully, because this is not entertainment. This is recognition. You walk into a room and your mind goes quiet, but your nervous system doesn't. It's like something inside you switches on without permission. A silent radar. A sensitivity that doesn't ask for consent. You feel shifts in tone before words are even formed. A slight tension in someone's jaw. A forced laugh that doesn't match the room. A smile that is holding something heavier underneath it. Changes in energy hit you in layers. Not loud. Not obvious. But precise. Almost surgical. Emotions that were never spoken out loud start moving through you anyway. Not because they were shared, but because they were leaked. And your system, it catches everything. You don't just observe people, you experience them. That's where it becomes dangerous. Because somewhere along the way, your mind stops distinguishing between what is yours and what is being picked up. A heaviness enters your chest. A restlessness you cannot explain. A sadness that has no story attached to it. And your first instinct is always the same: you must be the problem. You start taking responsibility for emotions you didn't generate. You start labeling foreign energy as your own inner state. And slowly, something very quiet happens. Your identity begins to blur. Because if you feel everything, then where do you end and others begin? If every room changes you, then who are you when you are alone? This is the silent distortion no one sees. You are not losing sensitivity. You are losing separation. And when separation fades, even peace starts to feel unfamiliar. Your mind never stops scanning. It doesn't rest the way other minds rest. That is even in silence. It is working, reading, analyzing, detecting patterns in tone, pauses, micro shifts in behavior that most people would never notice. Replaying conversations that already ended, not because you want to suffer, but because your system refuses to leave unfinished emotional data unresolved. Every sentence gets reopened. Every expression gets re-examined. Every silence gets translated into meaning. And then it happens. One part of you whispers, "I just know something is wrong." It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's certain in a way you can't ignore. But immediately, another voice interrupts. You're overthinking again. And that's where the conflict begins. Not outside of you, inside you. You get stuck between instinct and self-doubt, between perception and denial, between what you feel and what you've been told to ignore. And it creates a quiet internal tension that never fully resolves. Because you are not confused. You are divided. Not because your mind is weak, but because your awareness is too sharp to stay comfortable inside emotional uncertainty. You notice too much, too early, too accurately. And the world around you rarely validates that level of perception. So you start questioning yourself instead of questioning what you sensed. You don't lack clarity. You have too much of it at the wrong depth. What you actually lack is protection around your perception. Boundaries that tell your mind, this is not mine to solve. This is not mine to carry. This does not require investigation. Without those boundaries, awareness becomes overload. And overload always feels like overthinking, even when it is simply unfiltered truth hitting an unprotected mind. They don't come to understand you. They come to unload themselves into you. Not always consciously. Not always with intention. But the pattern is the same. At first, it feels like connection. There is attention. There is openness. There is intensity that feels like emotion. Intimacy. You think, finally, someone sees me the way I see others. But slowly, something shifts. The conversation becomes one-sided. Their emotions take more space than your presence. Their chaos becomes the center of gravity, and you adjust. You listen longer than you should. You hold more than you planned. You absorb what was never meant to be stored inside you. You become the listener, the absorber, the silent container. And the most dangerous part is not what they do to you. It is what you begin to believe about yourself because of it. You start thinking your value is in your availability, in your emotional capacity, in how much you can hold without breaking. So you stay longer. You forgive faster. You excuse things that quietly drain you, because being needed feels like meaning, and being useful feels like being loved. But they are not the same thing. Need is consumption. Love is recognition. And somewhere along the way, you confuse the two so deeply that you know low. Anger notice when you are being emotionally used instead of emotionally met. This is the trap. Not that you care too much, but that you never learned where caring ends and self-erasure begins. So you keep becoming the safe place for people who never learn how to stay safe for you. And every time it happens, a part of you quietly disappears into the role you play for others. The moment you pull back, you feel like you are hurting someone, even when your silence is just you trying to breathe again. Even when your distance is not punishment, but survival, there is an immediate emotional guilt that rises inside you. A pressure in your chest that says, you are doing something wrong. But what you rarely notice is this: you were already being hurt for a long time before you ever stepped away. Quietly, slowly. In ways that didn't leave visible marks, but still changed your inner world. And yet, the moment you choose yourself, your mind doesn't celebrate. It questions you. It judges you. It makes you the problem for finally responding to your own exhaustion. So you call it kindness. You call it understanding. You call it being good-hearted. But sometimes, it is not kindness at all. It is self-abandonment that has learned to wear a moral face. Because your nervous system has been trained in one direction for too long. One rule gets written into your body. Other people first, always. Not as a belief, but as a reflex. So even when you are drained, even when you are emotionally empty, even when your inner world is collapsing quietly, you still prioritize everyone else's comfort over your own stability. And over time, this creates a strange disappearance. You are present in everyone's life, but slowly absent in your own. You respond, you support, you adjust, you tolerate, but internally you are no longer fully there. A version of you keeps shrinking to make space for everyone else's emotions. Until one day you realize something unsettling: you have been accepted. Familiar to others, but unfamiliar to yourself. The conversation ended hours ago, but your mind is still inside it. It doesn't matter what time says. Your nervous system is not measuring clocks. It is measuring emotional residue. You are still feeling their tone, still replaying the exact way they said certain words, still analyzing the pause that came before their last message, still decoding their silence, as if silence is something you can solve if you think hard enough. And still, somewhere inside you, there is this quiet urge to fix it, to correct it, to go back and say it differently, to make it land better, to prevent the disconnect that already happened. But the truth is, it already collapsed. Not suddenly, not loudly, but gradually, in ways your mind is refusing to accept. And your body, it doesn't know how to leave emotionally, because no one taught it how. So even when the moment is over, even when the conversation has officially ended, even when nothing is happening, penning anymore, something in you remains active, alert, engaged, attached. You stay. Not physically, but psychologically. Stuck in loops that replay themselves without permission. Stuck in interpretations that never reach closure. Stuck in emotional timelines that no longer exist in reality. And the more you try to figure it out, the deeper you go into it. Because your mind believes that if it understands enough, it can undo what has already happened. But some things are not meant to be solved. They are meant to be released. And yet you remain there, suspended between past interaction and present reality. A part of you still talking to a moment that has already ended its conversation with you. This is not overthinking. This is emotional attachment that hasn't learned how to exit. People lie with ease. They adjust their expressions like changing clothes. They smile when something inside them is breaking. They speak calmly when their mind is chaos. They move through life, wearing versions of themselves that are edited, filtered, controlled. But you can't. Not in the same way. Something in you refuses to fully disconnect from what you feel. It leaks through you. It shows up in micro-expressions, in the way your voice shifts, in the way your eyes lose interest in pretending. Your face betrays you before your words even finish forming. Your energy speaks before your logic gets a chance to explain. Your silence becomes louder than anything you could say, and people notice, even if they don't understand what they are noticing. So you start realizing something uncomfortable. You don't know how to become fake enough for survival in a world that quietly rewards emotional performance. A world where masks are not just common, they are expected. And when you can't wear them properly, you begin to feel out of place. Not because you are superior or inferior, but because you are unfiltered in a filtered environment. That mismatch creates distance. You see what others hide. You feel what others suppress. You register what others successfully ignore. And slowly, you start questioning yourself instead of questioning the environment. Why is this so easy for everyone else? Why does it feel so heavy for me? And that is where the sense of separation begins. Not loud, not dramatic, but quiet and persistent. You begin to feel different, not just emotionally, but existentially. Like you are observing a world you are not fully built to participate in. And the more you try to fit, the more unnatural it feels to deny what you genuinely perceive. So you stay caught in between, too aware to fully belong, too honest to fully blend in. And that in-between space slowly starts to feel like loneliness with eyes open. There is a point where everything becomes too much, not in a dramatic way, not in a visible breakdown, but in a slow internal overload that builds quietly inside your nervous system. Noise starts feeling sharper than it should. People start feeling closer than you can handle. Emotions stop passing through you and start accumulating inside you. Expectations begin to feel like weight pressing on places that were already tired. And you don't notice the exact moment it crosses the limit. You just suddenly feel done. Not angry, not emotional, just full. And in that fullness, something in you shuts down. It's not a decision. It's not a choice. It is a biological retreat, a withdrawal that happens before your mind can even explain it. You isolate. You pull back from conversations. You stop responding the way you used to. You reduce yourself to silence because words start feeling expensive, and then you disappear without explanation. Not because you hate people, not because you don't care, not because you are trying to punish anyone, but because your system is trying to breathe again. When you stay too open for too long, everything enters you without filters, and eventually, there is no more internal spa. Sea left to process anything, so your mind chooses distance as protection. Your body chooses silence as recovery. Your energy chooses absence as restoration. And from the outside, people may misunderstand it. They may think you are cold, or distant, or unpredictable. But inside, it is something very different. It is not escape from others. It is return to yourself. A quiet reset that happens when emotional input exceeds your capacity to hold it consciously. And in that stillness, even isolation becomes a form of survival, not separation. Because sometimes, disappearing is not about leaving life. It is about making enough space inside yourself to feel like you can exist in it again. You ask yourself, am I too sensitive? Am I imagining things? Why do I feel so deeply when others don't? These questions don't come once. They repeat, quietly, relentlessly, like an internal interrogation that never fully ends. Because your experience of life doesn't match what you are told it should feel like. You notice too much. You feel too early. You react to things others don't even register. And instead of trusting that, you start turning inward, questioning your own perception. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe it's just in my head. And slowly, something very subtle happens. You begin to doubt the very system that is actually trying to protect you through awareness. But hear this clearly, not as comfort, not as reassurance, but as truth. Your sensitivity is not confusion. It is not instability. It is not weakness. It is not emotional exaggeration. It is awareness without protection. You perceive emotional undercurrents that most people filter out automatically. You register tension before it becomes visible. You feel shifts in energy before they become words. But the problem is not your awareness. The problem is that it has no boundary around it. So everything enters, unfiltered, untranslated, uncontained. And when awareness has no protectee on, it doesn't feel like insight. It feels like overwhelm. It feels like anxiety. It feels like emotional noise. It feels like something is wrong with you. But nothing is wrong with you. What you are experiencing is perception without insulation, knowing without separation, feeling without buffer. And in that state, even truth feels like too much to carry. So you start mistrusting yourself, not realizing that what you are actually doubting is your own clarity without structure. Because awareness, when unprotected, does not feel powerful. It feels like pain wearing the shape of understanding. Now listen closely, because this is where everything changes. You were never meant to carry every emotion you can feel. You were never meant to absorb every person you meet. Your depth was not designed for self-destruction. It was designed for understanding, but not ownership. The moment you stop treating every emotion as your responsibility, your life begins to return to you. Not everyone you feel is yours to fix. Not every energy you absorb is yours to hold. And not every silence you carry is your burden. There comes a point where awareness becomes a boundary. And in that moment, you don't become less empathetic. You become finally free.